Today, we're excited and blessed to be here with Kevin.
First time ever I'm doing a podcast in English. Any local Puerto Rican, obviously, between the age of 16 to 35 that is making a business that's benefiting the economy for the next 3 years, the company pays $0 in taxes.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Doesn't get better than zero last time I
Zero.
checked.
Nothing we talk about on here is financial advice, nor should you
Important.
take it as gospel and go spend your money in any way, shape, or form.
If you want to grow on social media, you gotta post every day. And there was this one video, it got 4 million views on Instagram, like 5 million on TikTok. For anyone that has gotten a video that's gone like viral, you know you're like glued to your phone, like, oh my God, all these followers, what's going on? What's happening?
Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Entrepreneurs Podcasts, where we focus on interviewing top-level entrepreneurs, investors, and game changers in Puerto Rico and globally, because we focus on a hyper-global with a hyper-local perspective on the socio-economic balance of where things are at in the world, to give you a perspective into the mindset of successful entrepreneurs. And today we're excited and blessed to be here with Kevin,
Thank you.
who is blowing up on the social media front and is a Puerto Rican personal finance influencer. So appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate you, Drew and Brian, for the invitation. And I'm pretty excited to have a good conversation here with you guys today.
You were just telling us last camera, is your first interview in English.
Correct.
Which is
This
exciting. And
first time ever I'm doing a podcast in English. So if you guys can review down in the comments, let me know if I did pretty well. I'll be very, very thankful of that.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Like, subscribe, all the things. So Kevin, we go back a few years. We met at Trade Space, which is like a local co-working space for traders, essentially. Exactly. And I think since then you've moved on to kind of do your own thing, but maybe give some context to your background on like how you even got into trading and how it led to that.
Definitely. I mean, I could be here like 2-3 hours talking you a full background on this story, but like to keep it short, I got to Trade Space in summer of 2020. So this was mid lockdowns. Yeah. This was middle of COVID. And the reason why I got there was because, yes, I found on social media, it's a trading co-working space. And I was into the trading space at the time. I was 20 years old at that moment. And the reason why I specifically went there was because I had just come off from losing a lot of money. When I say losing a lot of money, was I got washed out in the stock market, like trading options at the time. Now, it was like super bumpy ride. My time in Trade Space, I learned a lot of different financial markets, like crypto started booming up the year afterwards. So I was in the middle of the scene, making a lot of money, losing a lot of money. And then ultimately, by the beginning of 2022, I was wiped out completely. Like, I had lost over $100,000 at the time. And it was just pretty crazy, the idea of having to go through that. And to give even more perspective, the way I got the money, right? It's like 20 years old, have $100,000. That's not very common for a lot of people. The way I got that money was because I had something that happened to me at when I was growing up in 2018. When I was in 2015, there was a diagnosis in my family. So a disease knocked on the doors of my house. The disease was cancer. And then my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at the time. And so 2018 came around, and literally the last day of the year, so December 31st, my mom passed away. Like the last day of the year. It was, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've even processed this completely, just because I was in school and a lot of things were happening at the time. But
you guys were close.
Yes. And that was how I came across the financial capital in order to invest. And then in my head, I was studying finance in college at the time. So I was like, there's no better option for me with this money than rather to invest it. And then slowly got into the rabbit hole of like the options trading and then the crypto trading, and one thing led to another. And like two and a half years afterwards, that money was just wiped after COVID. So wild experience at the time. And then like slowly things started pivoting. I kind of like noticed that my time in Trade Space, it was very productive. I learned a lot, but I was only trying like to make the money back. And that was like my mindset all the time. Like, I got to make this money back. And I didn't knew at the time that I just had to let that go. And then there were other disciplines and practices when it came to my personal finances that I wasn't applying at all. And I took the decision to like look on that playing field, like where are the basics where I'm failing, and then I'm pretty sure if I do different things right with my money, next time I come around $100,000, I might be able to manage it pretty well. So like that's kind of like the entire build up in order to come to the field of the personal finance influencer space.
So on that, I have a couple questions. One, with your experience, not just at TradeSpace, but in general, trading and things like that, would you say most or some or none of the traders had those core financial principles? Or do you think they were just kind of like, didn't have the basics, but they're trying to trade, do these big things? Or what would you say?
So, I mean, stats don't lie. And when I say stats don't lie, if we go to Google right now, like 99% of traders fail as a career on the long run. We're talking 10, 15, 20 years to do that as a living. And the way I came across financial markets was because I wanted to make money. Yeah. And then first time you make money, you get on this high and you're like, oh my God, this is possible, right? I can make thousands of dollars through my phone. But then the actual discipline in order to control your emotions and do that for a long period of time, and then knowing what to do with those gains, I'm pretty sure a lot of people, whether if they haven't had the experience of maybe making a lot and losing a lot and having that scenario teach them, then there's no other way they're going to come across the basic principles that you said of personal finance. Because I mean, we're human beings and we get caught up in emotions and we're just not aware, and we just, start seeing the money coming in and we just want more of that. And so the moment I think that stops and then it turns around, it makes you realize like, oh my God, maybe I should open a savings account and take money out from the markets and put it there in order to, have a cushion for myself. So
you see a lot of that in entertainment and sports as well. I had someone I knew, he actually, maybe you know him, his name was Pico or something, I think, but he used to work for the Minnesota Vikings and some other sports teams specifically to help train the players on how to not blow it all when they retire and before they retire. And like his whole thing was just helping them to learn how to be responsible with the huge amounts of money they were making, so they didn't ruin their lives. That's like what his job was for the Minnesota Vikings.
That's super important. I mean, there's stories and stories. We could go to like Mike Tyson, career winnings, $300 million. And then he filed bankruptcy in 2013 for $30 million, meaning he spent $330 million, right? So it goes to a point.
The Tiger Pet must have been good.
It goes to a point where it doesn't matter how much you make if you don't know how to keep it and obviously preserve it and make it work for yourself towards the future. So I came around the idea that personal finance education on its own, it's a big problem, not only in Puerto Rico, but I bet to say it is a worldwide problem.
Of course, yeah.
And how, mental problems are being put up in big awareness campaigns, and like people want to be helped in those areas. I really believe that when it comes to managing your money, it's as equal as important, because the world we live in today, we want to think like money doesn't buy happiness, and we can have a big conversation on that, right? But without money, we cannot eat, we cannot live on our house, right? So it is a necessity to know how to properly manage it, and then obviously how to make, and this is what I say a lot, the best decisions for yourself when it comes to money, because probably the decisions you make are maybe not the same that you should be making, right? And
a lot of Cordoba runs on this end. But yeah, no, I get it. And that makes sense. And our education system doesn't teach us this.
Yes.
And so, you grew up here, right? So like how did that kind of play in with like what they taught or didn't in school that kind of inspired, and then kind of like how does that lead into like what you're teaching?
Yes.
And so forth.
Awesome. So I really like to say this story because I remember when I was in 11th grade and I was just about to cross to 12th grade, right? Senior year. And then there was this survey that they did to all the juniors on my school, and they were asking for different electives for the next year. And then they gave us like different languages and different sciences classes. and there was a little box at the bottom that said like other. And I remember I put tax planning for adults. That's what I put. I was like, I'm about to be a senior, and then next year after that, I'm in college. Yeah. I have learned nothing when it comes to me making my first dollar, and then what it's supposed to happen with like IRS or Hacienda here in Puerto Rico. And so the school didn't give next year the class for tax planning for adults, right? And then I remember I started school for finance, and the first year is like calculus and business administration, and then next year is like business or corporate finance. That was what they were teaching a lot, and like learning how to read balance sheets and income statements. And I was like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. This is gonna get me to the 100K salary investment banking job. But regardless, I'm still not being taught anything when it comes to should I be managing my money. So it wasn't here in Puerto Rico where I got personal finance education. It wasn't in Florida where I went to school at FIU where I got personal finance education. I never got that type of education. I'm pretty sure neither of you guys didn't either when you were in your...
Correct, for sure, definitely. I grew up in the Minneapolis public school system, did not, college didn't, and it's really kind of not, they don't take that initiative or that responsibility. But that's why I think another area you've delved into, and I'm curious, is like you have invested in mentors and in courses to learn, which kind of probably adds to your story.
Yep. So that was after I hadn't had learned anything in school or in college. The first way I got to the learning experience was through my experience of having a lot of money and then blowing it up. That was like a big educational curve for me, right? That's what I say. It's, now I say I lost 100,000, but really that's this tuition I was paying to the markets in order to learn, how should I manage that?
That's a good mindset.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I remember I told myself that in order to keep on investing, it would be a very intelligent idea to have a steady stream of income. So I started my journey in order to find a steady stream of income that would be doing something that I enjoy, something that I could see myself a lot of years doing, and something that I wasn't miserable at. And I remember this quote from Elon Musk that said, the bigger the problem that you solve, the bigger the reward you're going to get. And so I started thinking like, this personal finance education, I find a lot of content on this on YouTube, and there's books on this, but there's where I'm from, Puerto Rico, there's no one actively trying to teach these to the people that live there. And so I said, the very low personal finance education, that's a problem, and that's very big. So I'm pretty sure if I find a way to start a business around this particular subject, it could be, solving a big problem that could lead out to a big reward at some point. And at the same time, it was something that I would enjoy because I really need to say this. I am literally passionate for the topic of money. It's not that I want to be rich and a millionaire. No, it's just like making simple and good decisions and telling someone how to do them, and the gasp of air that they get when they're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have had my money in X bank account where rather I should have had it at this bank account. Like little things like that. I'm just so fulfilled by teaching that to other people. And I was like, this is the niche that I wanna get my steady stream of income from. And so at around April 2022 was when I started like my first course. When I say a course, I just hopped on social media. I said, hey, I'm teaching for 10 people, first 10 people that want to learn how to manage their personal finances. And I had studied previously prior to the course. I had read some books. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. That's like super basic principles. And
there's a Netflix show for that right
yes,
now too.
There's also now a Netflix show, correct. And then I had done a fair share of a lot of hours on YouTube. And so from that first time that I did those classes, I literally took that money and I invested it into personal finance certification. So I became a certified coach on personal finance, where, coming like on my come up, I always told myself, the bachelor is not important, the master is not important, certifications are not important. But regardless whether they're important or not, now I can say, I took the money from my first venture and I poured it into an investment for my knowledge, and yeah, thanks to all of that small process throughout the way, it's paid dividends. And I'm really happy for taking those decisions, because now I can say that my work is my passion, and the entrepreneurial route I took in order to do it, I wouldn't change anything for of the world. Yeah.
Awesome. So before we jump into a couple other questions, certified or not, nothing we talk about on here is financial advice,
Yeah,
nor should you
important.
take it as gospel and go spend your money in any way, shape, or form. Just so we get that out there, do your own research and consult other professionals if you're going to do anything like that. But now with that disclaimer out of the way, all right, so you've jumped in a year or so now, teaching multiple times a week, I think, like sharing the financial gospel with everyone in Spanish. And what's been like some of the biggest surprises as you've just over this last year plus? What surprised you the most?
And how are you differentiating yourself as well?
Okay, yeah. So I would say, like, the people that I get to work with, there's a wide spectrum. There's this construction person that he has his own company. He does very well for himself, but he was $60,000 in debt when he came to me, right? And it was something super small as to organize the business finances and his personal finances. And in a matter of 5 months, he was able to get out of that debt because he had the income level in order to pay that, right? So, like, I am super happy for those type of case studies. Also, I've been able to help people get like 2 weeks worth of free travel in Europe. These people are doing the best flights they're ever done in their entire life, like their best trip, completely for free in the airfare cost, just because I helped them organize how should they spend on their credit cards, and then the rewards they would get from that, how to maximize it for their own benefits. And then I there's a big crowd that has worked with me, that these are locals, that what they had in their head was, whenever I retire, what I'm going to do is I'll take the money from my 401k, I put it in my bank account, and then I get to live off from that and the social security benefit I get, right? And I was like, there's better options for you. Like, there's different financial instruments that can supplement you in a better way for retirement. So helping a lot of those people, as well as, those being things that are just so fulfilling, because that the decisions that they had in their head was probably because they learned from family or from a coworker, but their family member never got a formal education, or the coworker didn't got a formal education, right? They just got presentation from HR one day, and then they stick that for 10 years plus.
Yeah.
And there's that's what I said, little tweaks that people can do, and then that can help their lives for the better. I'll tell you another one. The high yield interest savings accounts, right? These are called HISAs. That's how we call it here in Puerto Rico. High yield savings accounts. These are regular savings accounts. These are like the most basic regular savings accounts. The only thing is that they have a higher interest in order for marketing purpose, in order to driving clients. But it works the same way, right? If tomorrow you want your money withdrawn, you can withdraw it tomorrow, and it's in your bank account on your checkings in 2 days. It doesn't matter if the bank's from the United States or if it's Puerto Rican, like, local. But the problem is no local bank offers this type of instruments, right? So if you have $20,000, $30,000 in savings, and that's like your emergency fund, like, that's awesome. But at least have it give you a return of 4% throughout the entire 2023, which is the mean of the returns that you can get on those. So I mean, I would say I'm just fulfilled for the small changes that happen in people's lives. And there's something that I say a lot, is that when I give, because I also give seminars, and we can get into that in a little bit, but I say something that it's, picture yourself that you have complete like all your goals in life, and then for the rest of your life you have food, water, shelter, clothing, but you don't get to make money never again, right? And then I tell people, like, picture what would you want to be doing in that scenario. And I tell myself, I could not get paid to teach about money, and regardless I would still be doing it, just because I like the topic so much. So that's like little things that I've seen throughout this past whole year that just give me the drive to just keep on going.
For sure. That's actually something I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to finances and stuff like that. Started for me in high school with high yield savings accounts, and the market also affects that. If nowhere's giving you high interest, or high interest is 1%, then like maybe not. But when I was in high school, it was pretty high, and I remember I would have the Wall Street Journal hidden behind my history book or whatever it was that I was in, and I was like looking and checking on different things, and then I couldn't wait to get home so I could see, oh, this bank has 5.25% and this one has 5.5% or something, and I probably had like $20 of extra cash anyways, but I was still like trying to micro do that, but I got excited about it. And then I went and I remember they had the referral. You get $10 for referring someone, so I referred all my siblings and my dad and whatever, and then I even went and created accounts for like my nieces and nephews.
Yeah,
so I'm like, this will be their college fund or something.
Together $10.
But like, yeah, so I remember doing that, and it was like the majority of my money at one point early on in high school was from referrals to high interest.
As Einstein says, the compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, right? So that's kind of what you're teaching. So something I'm curious about, because you've grown a large following online, and so I'm sure people are listening are curious of how you're able to do that. I mean, obviously financial advice is just a complicated subject, but yet you're able to, in bite-size spots, because people's attention span is so small at the moment. How have you been able to navigate that?
Yes. So when it comes to the growth on social media, I got to be fairly honest, right? I didn't start from zero in a sense. And when I say that, I say it because my mom, she was a public figure in the island. She was a news anchor for Channel 4, Noticentro. It's a very common morning show here. The way I always say it is like the CNN of Puerto Rico. And then she was literally the news anchor for more than 10 years. And so being her son, right, gives me some form of spotlight into the social media. So when my mom passed away, I was doing statements for my family. And so I got a big following from that at the moment, somewhere close to, my first 10,000 followers at the time. But then when I left TradeSpace and I started doing my classes, I quickly knew that the only way I was going to grow this was by giving free content and making valuable content. And so the first investment I ever did into the business was to hire a creative director. And this was a person that we were going to mastermind together. What content are we going to put out? What topics? How are we going to say this, right? I started to learn about copywriting and all these different topics of like having good retention in your videos. And then this person, he was like very good editor, very quick. So, and then there was also a quote it was this video I saw from Grant Cardone. He said, if you want to grow on social media and you want people to know you, you got to post every day. And this was probably June 2022. And I told my creative director, I told him, there's no other way we're going to grow if we don't post every single day. So from posting every single day, some videos started to hit, and then some got 100,000, 200,000. And there was this one video, it got 4 million views on Instagram, like 5 million on TikTok. This was the one that took me from 50,000 the beginning of the month to like 100,000 followers at the end of the month. And I remember the video, I was talking in a presentation at a university here in Puerto Rico, La Escuela de Artes Plásticas. This is in the school that's right in front of El Morro. So I was doing a presentation there for the students. And I remember I said, your credit card, the debit card, you got to leave your debit card in your house. That card never goes out. You're always going to carry your credit card. And then I was like, people were like, wait, what? And I was like, but the trick is you're going to use your credit card as it was a debit card, meaning every time you use it, you got to pay it in full the next day or whenever the charge is posted. Like no exceptions, no excuses. You use it, you pay it. You use it, you pay it. And that reel, 4 million views on Instagram. It was like a 2-3 day saga. Right. And for anyone that has gotten a video that's gone like viral, you're like glued to your phone, like, oh my God, all these followers, sure. What's going on? What's happening? And so this literally happened last September. So a full year ago. And from that, I got my first 100,000, and then just slowly the consistency of publishing every day, like posting every day on all across all social medias, slowly growing the awareness. And then that's how I like grew the social media. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, what I see as well is tenacity. I see grit. I recently read that book. Persistence and passion mixed together, and it seems like you embody it. So maybe what's your mindset around all of that? Because you always seem to have such like a positive mental attitude about things, and mindset is everything. So
Yes.
I know you read
Yes.
and so forth.
So it all started like probably the beginning of the year, starting 2023. I came around like starting to see a little bit of success, the equity curve starting to go the other side on my end. And then at the time I had this mentor of mine, and I say mentor, but this is a friend that is 1 year older than me, but he's doing like 10, 20x, right? My income. And so he told me like, bro, first thing I do when I wake up is I do 20 to 15 minutes of grabbing a book and just doing a read at the morning, first thing in the day. So I said, you know what? If he's doing so good, there's no reason why I wouldn't copy the habit. And so I started getting to the habit of reading, and I think that's a hack for any entrepreneur, right? If you can find 15 to 20 minutes throughout your day in order to consume some information from a book, whether it's a book or an audible, right, audiobook, that just goes to another level, because now the rate that you're consuming new information, it just goes up drastically because you're doing it every day. And so for me, different reads, like for example, Ego is the Enemy. I don't know, right? Ryan Holiday. I don't know if you guys ever read that book, but that
Kind of
book,
stoic book.
yes, it's a very stoic book. But that put me in a position where the book talks about how you have ego when you're like at your lows. Like you don't want to accept that you're like at the lows. You get ego when you're on your come up, right? You start seeing some form of success, and then you're like, you know what, I'm bragging, I'm buying all this stuff, right? And then you also see ego when you're like at the top. You're like, you know what, I made it, right? No one can touch me. I'm up here. I got like all designer brands, the mansion, everything. And then the book talks about how in all those 3 stages of life, the only way you're gonna like come back down is if you get ego get in the way. And then that's like, it doesn't matter age of people, that's usually what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So the dude in the book says like, this is a yearly read. You gotta remember this every year, because if you want success, you can visualize it and work towards it, but you gotta be very present to always stay humble. And just, as you said, the passion behind what you're doing, stay persistent, but don't let like all the money and the fame get to you, because that's ultimately what's gonna bring you back down. So yeah.
Yeah, those are good principles. Actually, from like, well, not to get too off finances, but from like a scriptural religious standpoint, we call it like the pride cycle. And you can even read, well, people do well, they take over other places, they get prideful, they get destroyed, and you can see like the whole pride cycle. It's simpler, and there's principles that are applicable across everything in life, quite frankly, whether it's finances or whether it's your worship or whether it's schooling or anything else.
Family time.
All of that. So it's really interesting as we get to interview people and talk to people as well, is you can pick out and see trends of like, oh, well, that worked for him in this, but it also could work in that. And I think, yeah, in one of our other interviews, Hector was talking about he had gotten a PhD, but the learning how to research and think critically and everything could be applied to everything, not just in academia. I think it's really interesting to see him pull out these parallels and these trends. So,
which is what we're with Uncommon Entrepreneurs, what we mean by that, right? Where it's like you're seeing the opportunity and you're harnessing it. And so, yeah, with that kind of in mind, I mean, where do you see kind of like the trends with online going, and what kind of money is possible with like the dedication and everything that you do?
Of course. So trends when it comes to the social media game, I am very strong in the idea that in order to sustain a long-term gains from social medias, you need to build a brand, ideally a personal brand. And the way I saw it was, I'm reading these books, and it's a Tony Robbins book that's been written in like 1995. And then I tell myself, wait a second. So if the book's from 1995, it means that in 2005, it's a decade of the book, right? 2015 is 2 decades. And now 2025 is going to be 3 decades of this person writing a book that holds like very good, valuable principles year to date, meaning his brand and like his personal brand from 1995 has been very solid throughout, years and years to come. And right now, the way I see it is, yes, you can start and you can leverage social media in order to start your personal brand. But in my case scenario specifically, I don't see social media as to making money like this month or start making $5,000-$10,000 on social media, because the way I see it is, if I want to do this for the long term, right, I gotta study what Tony Robbins did or Robert Kiyosaki did, that they have led a same message for decades and decades, and that they have like been rewarded throughout time for doing so. And so the way I would start 2023, right, I would want to work on my personal brand, but then I will also think a lot of my value proposition, right? What I'm bringing to the market, what problem am I solving, what product am I bringing in that is solving XYZ problem. Because you ask for the amount of money that you can be making on social media, and when you start learning the social media game, people think that the people with a lot of followers are the ones that are just raking in a lot of money and banking. But in reality, you don't a lot of people don't know or
it's a
understand.
Funnel. Where's your funnel going?
Yes, it's a funnel. And people don't also understand that it doesn't necessarily means a lot of people in order to make money. Because I know people that have $10,000 followers on their Instagram page, and they could be making $100,000-$200,000 a month, right? So it varies a lot, whether your offer, what is it that, and again, it goes back to the value proposition. What is it you're providing to the market? But ultimately, yes, what you said, the funnel, I came across the concept last year. I was like, what's this? A funnel, right? How does this work? And then, you slowly see how eyeballs are at the top, and then those that are more interested, will do a next step, which will probably be like link in your bio. And then from that, you have people that are more interested in whatever it is that you are providing. And then if you make a good job, right, and then the first people that bought from you, they talk good about you, like they refer you, etc. Then you have a good product, good value proposition, and then you can probably push it a little bit more into social media space. And ultimately, that's how a lot of people end up making money from that. In terms of amount, it varies a lot. I really think that people from the outside don't see the operational cost. Right, so we can be talking about making $100,000, but what if you spent $70,000 on advertisement, and then you have your payroll at $20,000? Right, you only get to keep $10,000. So there's a lot of things when it comes to the entrepreneurial side of things that I really think a lot of people don't see, and also entrepreneurs that are starting are really not thinking about that, and that's why I think education is so important, right? So like podcasts like this that are meant to bring some form of education to your audience and have them, see things from a different perspective, because everyone wants to start, I'll get 10,000 followers and then each one will give me $2 for something and I'll make $20,000, right? It doesn't
Not
necessarily work like that. Yeah.
For sure. I do and I agree on the personal brand side. And for a decade, honestly, I've gone back and forth. I've probably started over 100 blog posts and not finished, and just other things, but super important. But when you think about it, a company can go away, could dissolve, could go bankrupt, unless you're dead, but your legacy still stands. You're not going away as a person, whatever it is you're doing. And that's why you see certain successful people as well. They were doing one thing, now they're a serial founder, they're on their 7th company because they built, sold, whatever. But they bring a lot of that with them. I mean, take Elon Musk, for example. You have your Tesla people, you have your SpaceX, you have all these different things. You have the original PayPal mafia. So depending, there's now Twitter or X. So you have all these different things. But harness onto a brand, and you'll see that trend as well. I spend more time on LinkedIn than anything else. Maybe that dates me a little bit, or I don't know, but and you'll see the CEO, at least for a lot of the successful growing companies, have way more followers than their company does, even if their company is doing millions or a lot of money or anything like that. But it's like these dynamic founders are like leading the charge, and in many cases, the most valuable marketing asset. Just and it's relatable. Like, it's easier to relate to a person than just some corporate brand.
But then there's something also I want to add to that, and it's the fact that a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, most of them start with the idea, at least I did, of first being my own boss. Oh, I'll be my own boss, right? I'll work under my own terms. But then the idea started cramping up of, you know what? Maybe someday this business can be worth something and then I can sell it. But then I got to the realization that there's a big distinction when you start a personal brand, because ultimately a personal brand is not going to be a business on the long run. It's going to be your full-time job, right? You start a personal brand, you're starting a job. You're getting a job for yourself. So you have to consciously be thinking if you want a job or not. Because starting a business and building this asset, then at some point someone can buy you for 6 years worth of profits, and then, you know, they can run the business and make money. That's an entrepreneurial route that maybe does not require social media and the fact of you hiring yourself to be your own personal brand, right? And so I really think that before starting the personal brand and starting social media, in order to make money from that, you consciously need to be thinking that you're getting yourself into a job, and then you need to like that job, right? Otherwise, it's not going to work on the long run.
You won't stick with it long term.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of pivoting a little bit, we had talked offline, you with the incentives in Puerto Rico, how have those kind of shifted you to, because you had a decision, do you move back to the island? A lot of people have that thought, right? Because, you know, as a U.S. citizen, you have the right to live anywhere. You're going to school in Florida. How did that kind of impact, and maybe give some context?
Yes. So, you know, going back to the story of TradeSpace and why I go back to this place was because when I first started there, I got a 6-month lease. And the reason it's a 6-month, because I started June, I got the lease till December. In my head, I was like, COVID is going to end in December. So I'm going to go back to school for next semester, back to Florida. And so things didn't went that way. That was first things. And then at the time I had a decision was, because I had the option to go back to school. My school, they were like doing smaller classrooms and more restrictions because of pandemic. But then I told myself, you know, hey, wait a second. There's something here in Puerto Rico called Act 135 when I first got into it.
Now under Act 60.
Now under Act 60, correct. And
the Young Entrepreneurs Act.
Exactly. It's what's called the Young Entrepreneurs Act. And I started reading on this, and it says any local Puerto Rican, obviously, that it's between the age of 16 to 35, that is making a business here in Puerto Rico that's benefiting the economy of Puerto Rico, they get different exemptions, and then they also get different incentives and helps when it comes to starting their businesses. So one thing is you get loans at a very low interest rate from the Banco de Fomentos here in Puerto Rico. And so that was something that piqued my interest, because I was like, you know, I don't have money to start a business right now, but if I can get a very low interest rate loan, now that loans are, you know, 7-8%, probably more if it's for a business, right? That's something to pay attention to. And then the other thing that piqued my interest and made me make the decision of not going back to the States and staying in Puerto Rico and wanting to have a business and be an entrepreneur here in the island was the tax exemptions that the act gives for young entrepreneurs. So it goes like this. When you file for the act, the second you file, you're eligible to start operations, whether or not you get, or you're not going to get approved at this spot, right? It's going to be a process. It's a few months. So from the moment you apply, you're able to start operations. And then from that moment, for the next 3 years, or the first $500,000 in net profit your company makes, the company pays $0 in taxes. So in my head,
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero.
Doesn't get better than zero last time I
Zero,
checked.
right? Oh, and then, I'm 23 years old, Puerto Rican, and then a lot of people here have big misconceptions of the things that are going down in the island when it comes to the economies of here in Puerto Rico. And then I slowly incorporated it in my content, but then I took it away because I figured I'm doing personal finance content, not entrepreneurial content. So like there's a bit of clash when you try to bring both things. But there was this video where I said, there's no reason why any Puerto Rican that has lived his entire life here does not gives it a shot in order to get $500,000 tax free in order to start your life after that moment. And so for me, my idea was, yes, I got the 3 years, but the goal is the $500,000 because nowhere else in the world you're going to have an opportunity like this where you could be young, you can learn about business and have your own enterprise, and then come out of that with $500 at paying 0% tax, right? And then the fresh start that you can have from that, making good financial decisions for your personal side and for the business side as well. There's no bigger opportunity than that for people 35 and under, especially that obviously are here in Puerto Rico. So,
And we find that can be a misconception because
Yes.
a lot of times and I appreciate you giving this so much, clarity and detail because how many people in your circle know about this?
I have some stats from this office. I know that last year they granted like 250 decrees for this. And when you start thinking it, it's like that's less than one person per day being approved. And then the crazy stat is that they approved almost everyone. Right?
Yeah.
They approved almost everyone, meaning
there's 3 million on this island, and yet
yes, meaning I think there's very low awareness on this. But then when I come to, and then this can be very controversial. I really don't want to get into the topic, but there's this conception where the locals say, people are coming from outside and they don't want to pay any taxes. But like if you're 35 years and under and you have that in your head, you clearly haven't educated yourself enough to know that you have the exact same opportunities. And then it ultimately gonna comes to what you do with that money. That's gonna put you at a better position in life or a worse position in life. And then there's thousands of excuses, right? Oh, I don't have an idea. I don't want to start a business. Well, that's not my problem. But at least your government is giving you the opportunity to start fresh. And I think that's very important because, again, it's the misconception that people just don't know about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been very vocal on it on different podcasts. But again, personal finance and the entrepreneurial route, it's just pretty hard to do two things at a time. And there's a book called The One Thing. You got to focus on one thing, right?
Yeah.
Do one thing good and then you do others.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I get it. I mean, it makes sense that some people don't not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
and we
yes.
like to
I mean,
hit
it's
on
not.
that theme that there is such a thing called an intrapreneur where you're working for a company, but you're treating it like it's your company. And it's like the effort you put in is you're given different expectations and you exceed them. Do you think you're going to get more like bonuses and other things come your way or opportunities? Of course, that's how life works when you press into that. And so that's good. That's interesting feedback that not the awareness isn't there. But an interesting takeaway that I don't think a lot of people have realized, if they just pivoted to being like a consultant for the same company that they were working for, they could be a 1099 instead of a W-2. And
they can have the decree. Exactly.
And you don't have to be like the next Elon Musk here. It's just like, no. You have a steady client that's paying you to be, and obviously we're not getting into all the details and talk to an accountant on all that process, but it's a lot of times people overthink it. And then especially with like our events, what we attempt to do with like the networking part, your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. And the concept being that like if you don't have the ideas, then come to an event where they can meet you and start getting around that energy and listening, and like it's because you probably haven't just put a lot of attention towards it. Do you kind of see that in your circles? I mean, with your
definitely. I mean, it's very important to get out there, right? Inside your four walls at your house, you're not gonna learn something new other than from YouTube books. But the learning curve really comes, when you start getting with different minded people, start having this type of conversations, right? Where you start to see things at different perspectives, and then things like that just sparks ideas in your head. So as you said, you can be the entrepreneur, right? And then structure myself legally in a different way where I could get paid, as you said, 1099, and then I could apply for the secrets, right? It's thinking it in a different way where it's like people that are entering the workforce here in Puerto Rico, and this goes along very close with what you learn about money. And the reason I say this is because the people that are coming into the workforce, what they know is what they've been taught from their families, right? So we could go back in history, in the history of here in Puerto Rico, but the idea is that if your family, the people that you grew up with, didn't had this type of conversations, this type of
or on the dinner table,
exactly. If they didn't talk about entrepreneurship in the dinner table, it's not going to be something that you're going to think when you're coming into the workforce. And so that's why I think it's very important to put yourself out there, right? You can be like, have social anxiety and all this stuff, right? But then think it twice, because you never know who you can meet. And more often than not, and I can say this from my own personal experience, we're thinking, oh, should I go to that event? Because I don't know no one.
Yeah.
And then, I'm getting a bit nervous. Intimidated. Yes, correct.
It's out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. But the second you put yourself out there, right, you step into that space, start talking to different people, because more often than not, people approach to you. They say, hi, what's your name, what you do, etc. And then you slowly start learning from that, and the ideas and again, like the light bulb turning on in your head afterwards, it gives you the rush to try different things, entrepreneur, structuring myself differently. What are all the different incentives that I have here? What should I be doing with my money? And then slowly but surely you start making better decisions for yourself that ultimately, get you to a better place.
And we'll be getting into this on a lot of other podcasts too, but the central theme that it really comes down to is entrepreneurship is a mentality, and it can be applied within as you work for somebody or work for yourself. And the idea is, I think, and I'm curious maybe in wrapping up, like what you think on this theme, but like with where the world's going with AI, with blockchain, with all the technology that's happening, just the global shifts that are occurring. If you don't think of what you need to do for yourself, even if it's working for somebody, but learning something new to be able to position it, like you have to be so multi-dimensional. Like, I don't know if it's ever been this way in previous generations. I don't think it has, because we're always online. It's amazing how easy it is to be distracted right now. Yes. And so it's impressive at your young age that you've picked up on these traits, but what maybe in closing, what do you say to people in
that type
general?
of position? Yeah. So what I would say is it's very we can go into the rabbit hole of motivation and discipline, but in reality, what I find that has worked for me is to have goals very clear, and once those goals are achieved, set yourself more goals, and probably something harder, and that way you can give yourself something to work for every single time. And it gets to the point where you are kind of like not distracted by all of these different trends and themes, and going to social media 2-3 hours a day, just scrolling and not getting anything back from that scroll, like not getting any return on your time being invested there, or like trying to learn AI and then be like, I cannot work with this type of platforms. I'm just gonna give up. No, like if you have goals that you set for yourself, and you always remember yourself, and then this is a cheat code I do. They're written in my mirror in my room. So I wake up every day, I read my goals. There's no way I'm escaping from that. If I don't read them, I know they're written there, and I was like, why am I not prioritizing the things that I want? And then obviously by prioritizing that, I know I'm going to have to do whatever has to be done in order for those things to get accomplished. So I really think that's a very powerful way in order to forget the things that are happening on the macro side right, around the world, and just focus on yourself. And ultimately, it's like very little small things that you can change on your personal side in order to start accomplishing these goals, and ultimately learning new skills and learning all this technology that's innovating throughout the world. And I think that could be a good way in order to not being held up by all of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we'll have some further conversations. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the podcast. We'll be back again. Check often, Uncommon Entrepreneurs, and we'll see you next time.